we will introduce the 21 CLD, or 21st Century Learning Design, Collaboration Rubric and Decision Tree. These capture the big ideas of collaboration, and they are a useful framework when designing learning activities to develop students' collaborative skills. This section examines whether students are working with others on the learning activity and the type of collaboration they are engaging in. The 21 CLD Collaboration Rubric examines whether students are working with others on the learning activity and the quality of that collaboration. At higher levels of the rubric, students have shared responsibility for their work, and the learning activity is designed in a way that requires students to make substantive decisions together. The strongest learning activities are designed so that the students' work is interdependent, requiring all students to contribute in order for the team to succeed. We can capture all of these ideas by using a decision tree. A decision tree is a visual way of representing the big ideas in collaboration. It is designed as a number of questions. As you can see, there are 4 questions in the collaboration decision tree. The first relates to whether the students are working in groups or not. The second relates to shared responsibility. The third to substantive decision making, and the last one to the interdependence of the students' work. Considering each of these questions is useful when designing a learning activity. The power of using a decision tree is that it provides a framework for designing learning activities, and in this case, examining opportunities for collaboration. Not all learning activities have each of these levels, but over a period of a year, for example, you should look to include learning activities at all of the levels. For example, there will be times when you will need students to engage in individual work. At times, you will want your students to work together to make substantive decisions. There are other times when you will want your students to work together to produce an interdependent product. But sometimes you will just want them to produce individual accounts or reports. It all depends on planned learning outcomes and the needs of your students. You need to bear in mind as you look at the decision tree that the numbering system is a code, not a score. For example, a code 1 merely indicates that students are required to work individually. It is not a value judgment. So let's look at this collaboration decision tree. The first question asks if students are required to work in pairs or groups. If the answer to this question is no, students are not required to work together in pairs or groups, then the learning activity is coded as a 1. This is an example of classroom activity that can be coded as a 1.
Okay, and here we've got knowledge of word and knowledge of text structures. What are text structures?
When you're doing a different
sentences, anything else?
When you're doing a different language, you want to get the text right.
Yes, so we've got sentences, the different things that come into text structure. Sentences, full stop, excellent. So the way the sentence is written, the punctuation, and what's the other important thing when you're writing a sentence?
Letters.
That's punctuation. Grammar. So they're the 3 things. I want you to write in and explain to me why you think it's important. Please get started now.
Oh, these. How do you get into this? How do you get into this?
As I said, the first question asks if students are required to work in pairs or groups. If the answer to this question is yes, students are required to work together in pairs or groups, then I must ask if the students have shared responsibility. If the answer is no, the learning activity is coded at a 2. In other words, students do work together, but they do not have shared responsibility. This is an example of classroom activity that can be coded as a 2.
Amy saw a rabbit behind the bush. He said hello to her.
Click on
This
this.
is Amy. Amy loves animals. She has 1 dog and 2 fish.
And then for the word, you have to click on word and click on each letter, each word.
This.
If students are required to work in pairs or groups and have shared responsibility, I must move to the next question. Do students make substantive decisions together? If the answer is no, the learning activity is coded at a 3. This means students do work together, they do have shared responsibility, but they are not required to make substantive decisions together. This is an example of classroom activity that can be coded as a 3.
On kaikilla. Entä nämä sitä? Mulla meillä
How does language relate to reading words? You have speak a lot of words. How would that benefit your alphabet? How does that help you to get your How does knowing all the words help you?
40 seconds left.
Because you know everything. Hampat saruat. Niin. Se. Hampat. Missä hampaat? Missä hampaat? Ei kun kirjoitettu. Onko me kirjoitettu hampaat tänne? Ollaan. Eikö me voitais vaan tehdä yksinkertaisesti tuohon hampaat? Muussaavat. Väli. Ota hampaat. Muu. S. On vieressä oli vaan. Kaksi. Niitä. Saavat. Musaavat. Ruuan. Ruuan. Ei niitä väliin, vaan ruuan. Eli pelkällä alalla. Ruuan. Sille. Hampaat muusaavat. Siinä lukee hampaat muusaavat. Vielä väliin. Ruuan. Valmis ja piste. Pistä. Voi pistä. Tää on piste. Näin. Sitten seuraava. Mahalaukku. Sulattaa ruoan. Joo. Mahalaukku sulattaa ruoan. Mä kirjoittaa. Helmi. Nuoretelle. Joo. Helmin jälkeen tulee vielä. Mä oon nopea kirjoittaa. Me ollaan nopea kirjoittaa. Mahalaukku. Me käsitään. Mahalaukku sulattaa ruoan. Voit sä auttaa vähän Lukas Helmiä? Mitä? Mahalaukku sulattaa ruoan. Mahalaukku. Väli. Siinä on jo väli. Siinä on 2 väliä. Älä sitä vähän. Tässä. Sulu. Sulla. Ota nyt kävi vähän pikku. Mitä sä alat nyt sekoilemaan? Eläpäs nyt. Mikä se? Kuinka vaan se? Se kirjoittaa vähän. Seplet. Nää. Mutta toi pitää. Tuhmahen.
However, if the students do have to make substantive decisions together, I move to the next question and ask if the students' work is interdependent. If it is not, then the learning activity is coded at a 4. This means students do work together, they do have shared responsibility, and they do make substantive decisions together about the content, process, or product of their work. But their work is not interdependent. This is an example of classroom activity that can be coded as a 4.
3 rubrics that I've given you for examples, and you're going to tell me if there's anything in those rubrics that we can use for assessing Chekhov.
Censorship and words. Illustration. I think we should go with sentences. Sentences and words. We'll talk about it. So this is beginning. Says how to put sentences and words. Left to right. Orientation.
And she put together the word lists for each of your partners. Okay? So what she's done is she's gone through the word list and she's marked where your partner is. So some of them, they're doing their word boxes, and in each box you have a list of words. So this person is at box 13. Okay? So they're as far as here. So that means when you're writing your story, you're going to use words from box 1 to 13, because you'll use that for what?
Your program for the story.
Yeah, what would you call that if you're going back over something to help them?
Revision.
Revision. So review or revision, exactly. So that's going to reinforce the words that they already know. And then here, past 13. That's where they are at the moment. You're going to take some of the words from here. Now, are you going to have more words from 1 to 13 or afterwards?
1 to 13.
1 to 13, why?
Because they're the ones she's learned, and you don't want too much of the ones the person has learned.
Exactly. Should you have them all from 1 to 13?
No.
No, why not?
Because they need to learn as well.
Yeah, exactly. They need to also develop. They also need to learn new things. So we're not just going to confine it to things they already know, because then is there any learning or development in the ebooks? No, it's just revising them. So it's not just for a revision tool. We want to push them on forward with new words that they haven't come across already.
Yeah, I got the hang of it now. It's just you have to make it extremely simple. That's like if she doesn't know what you can click on
If the student's work is interdependent, then the learning activity is coded at a 5. This means students do have shared responsibility, and they do make substantive decisions together about the content, process, or product of their work, and their work is interdependent. This is a final example of a classroom activity that can be coded as a 5.
No mitäs teidän nyt pitäisi tehdä?
Me tehtiin se alijäämä.
Joo. Mitä teidän nyt pitäisi tehdä? Laitetaanko sitten kyllä?
3, 4, 9 kannat.
Tässä esitellään keskusta. Ihminen peseytyy joka päivä. Lampaita pitää harjata.
Tomaatti.
So, to recap, when you are designing a learning activity in which you want to focus on developing collaborative skills, you need to keep in mind the questions outlined in this decision tree. Do students have the opportunity to work together? Will they have shared responsibility? Will they make substantive decisions together? Will their work be interdependent? In this way, the decision tree helps you to be more aware of the type and quality of collaborative skills you need to plan for. The decision tree can also be represented as a rubric. As you can see, each of the numbers 1 to 5 outline the criteria for the condition of the code. For example, to achieve a code 2, students do work together, but they do not have shared responsibility. You can decide which you find easier to use, the decision tree or the rubric when coding learning activities. To really understand how this applies, in the next section, we will look at and examine some 21 CLD anchor lessons. Now that we've explored the collaboration rubric and decision tree, in the next lesson, we will take a look at the collaboration